Hi, I'm Dr. Beth Molleson.
And I'm Dr. Alyssa Watson.
Thanks for joining us here in the Veterinary Breakroom. These are short conversations where we chat informally about relevant topics in vet med. And today we're going to kick this off by talking about some current news. You may have seen recently, early mid-May, it was announced that there are not yet, but seeking approval, 2 new veterinary specialties, one for acupuncture and embryo, and the other for embryo transfer. They're being considered by the American Board of Veterinary Specialties. And so this kind of caught our eye because Alyssa and I were talking about the fact that neither of us have really thought much about the way that specialties are formed and that these organizations approve specialties, where they come from, the history of them. And so it was fun to do a little bit of diving into the history of all of this. And then also that leads us into a conversation about how has that changed the landscape of veterinary medicine with growing number of specialists, growing number of specialties. What does vet med look like now compared to even just a few decades ago? So Alyssa, I know you did a deep dive for us on a little bit more about what the process is like for these potential new veterinary specialties to become a real thing. So do you mind to catch us up?
No, not at all. Yeah. So this was something that came across my inbox, I think with my AVMA newsletter, that these 2 organizations were seeking recognition. And it occurred to me that I had no idea how any of that happened. And it's actually a pretty detailed process, I found out. So they need to submit a letter. There's actually a period of public comment. So anyone who feels really strongly about this or is interested in it, either the organization of acupuncture, so it's the American Board of Veterinary Acupuncture, or the American Embryo Transfer Association, and would like to comment on that, those comments are going to be open until it looks like August 12th of this year. And we'll go ahead and throw a link in if you want to go publicly comment on that. The reason they have those, public comments open is to gauge, distinctiveness of the proposed specialty from other organizations that are already out there. Okay, so, looking at this just for me, there is already a board of theriogenology. And so that's kind of one of the things they want to get. They want to get the veterinary community's opinion onto whether or not, this is different enough that it should have its own specialty, as well as, what purpose is this serving for the community, and the potential acceptance of this specialty by the rest of the community, as well as our clients, and the public that we serve. So really cool. I thought, I had no idea any of this happened. So there's this public comment period. You have to list out what jobs and tasks these are going to the specialists are going to perform, and go through these formal petitions. And then this is actually reviewed even after your organization has been registered. This is reviewed periodically to make sure that the organization is still serving its purpose, which I thought was really cool. What do you think about that, Beth?
Yeah, absolutely. It was interesting to look into. I thought it was interesting too. I didn't even know this had happened, but it looks like back in 2016, there had been a proposal for a petition for the acupuncture specialization to be approved, and that was denied in 2016, citing lack of scientific basis for such a specialty. So I thought that was interesting history as well. But yeah, like you said, Alyssa, it did kind of get us diving more into how all of this comes together and what that process has looked like in the past. So I know you probably already know the stat, but if you had to guess how many specialty organizations there currently were, how many do you think you would have guessed?
Yeah, it is hard because I do know the stat. So,
I'll tell you what I would have guessed, which was not 22. So there are 22 specialty organizations and 46 actual specialties. So that's like your ABV, I'm going to get all the letters wrong, ABVP, where you've got your feline, bovine. Those are all of sort of the 46 specialties, but there are 22 specialty organizations like ACVIM.
So I'll even jump in there, Beth. When I started looking at this, I am a little embarrassed to admit it, but I didn't really realize the difference between a specialty organization, a registered specialty
Mm-hmm.
organization, and a specialty. And so like you just said, there's 22 specialty organizations, but within those organizations, some of them then have specific specialties, so like the American College of Veterinary Internal Medicine includes cardiology and neurology. Not all of them have specialties within their organization, but a lot of them do, and so that's how you get that dual number there. But go ahead.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Alyssa. I hadn't even considered what those different terms were. I would have called them like specialties and subspecialties, but it's the specialty organization and then the actual specialties. So again, these are things that just flew right over my head, I'm sure, in prior conversations. So I think another thing that we wanted to address that got sort of our wheels turning was the idea of what this, like I said, means for the landscape of veterinary medicine. And I know, Alyssa, we pulled some stats sort of to look at what the numbers are today compared to what they were even just decades ago in terms of
Mm-hmm.
specialties and what percentage of the veterinary population was specialized. So it was really interesting to see. I think they described it as, of course, a clear upward trend in the number of veterinary specialists, but with accelerated growth over time. So today there are 16,000 specialists, and I believe that's 12% of veterinarians in the US. And I think the stat was maybe in 1990, it was roughly 7% of veterinarians were specialists. So really rapid growth, but they stated that maybe that has started to plateau. Alyssa, did those numbers surprise you, or is that sort of what you've seen over the last few decades in your career?
Yeah, it went along pretty consistently with what I had noted. What I didn't realize was how far back specialties did go. Like the first uh, approved recognition of a specialty organization was actually back in 1951, which, like, that's a lot earlier than I would have thought it would have been. I wasn't surprised by the actual specialty itself. So they actually recognized two specialties that year in 1951 when they started doing this, and they were pathology and public health, which makes a lot of sense. It's been a while actually since we've had a new specialty organization recognized. The last one that I could find, at least, was the American College of Animal Welfare in 2012. And so that's over a decade ago now. So it's really kind of big news, I guess, that these two, organizations are looking for recognition now, and that we might get a couple new ones. But yeah, that it seems like, I graduated in 2003, and it seems like right around that time, there was this big explosion of different specialties being recognized, as well as a lot more people going on to obtain board certification and specialize. And I do think that it is affecting the way, we practice now, as well as the comfort level that a lot of newer early career veterinarians and more recent graduates, i'm just I feel like they have a lot more access to specialists in their daily interactions than I had when I first graduated. And it's kind of a catch-22. It's a double-edged sword, because it's great to have those things to offer, but not all clients can really, afford that. And I worry that general practitioners aren't doing some of these procedures or handling some of these more intricate cases because they're referring a lot earlier than we used to, just because they have the ability to. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's interesting because I do think this rapid expansion of specialties certainly mirrors, obviously, somewhat the demand of the profession and of the pet owning population. So I think it's intuitive to most of us now to recognize that pets now more than ever are being treated as family members, which correlates to wanting to explore maybe more extensive specialty care. So on one hand, I'm sort of torn on this idea. On one hand, I think it's fantastic. And just in the name of science, I think it's fantastic that we have more and more options for pets and really truly specialized care to do so many of the same things that we do in humans for them. On the other hand, we of course, talk about cost. This is not the way every pet owner is. Not every pet owner has the financial ability or other abilities to pursue specialist care. And to me, that gets really complex. Um, even just thinking about pets who need extensive surgeries, who maybe have a prognosis that is uncertain. And it really comes down to a financial decision for those owners of, are we willing to put X amount of money into, gambling on this pet surgery? Will the pet go on to live a long and happy life? It just, to me, it's always very complex when it comes down to financial ability. I don't think, obviously, that's a new idea. And so, even just myself, last week I had my dogs at the vet. I had just a small mass removed on Paul, and I thought, oh, no big deal. I'll just take this and get it removed. And it was like almost $500 to do so. And my first thought was like, I just, it was just brought home how expensive everything in veterinary medicine is these days, and how that moral fatigue that we all have of like, oh, if I knew or thought it's going to be benign, do I leave it and save that money for more specialized care? And of course, this is me with all the resources available, all the access to the specialty veterinarians, trying to sort of play that moral decision. And so I think just more and more of that comes up the more specialized that veterinary medicine gets. So to me, there is a little bit of like stress associated with having all of these options and knowing what is right for each of your patients, what is right for each of your pet owners, just gets more and more complex.
I think even, beyond that, as we look at the cost of veterinary education, if we have 12%, and if that is going up, what if it goes up to 20%? What if 20% of US veterinarians are specialists? We're also looking at not only cost to clients, but the cost of educating those specialists, the cost, the debt that those clinicians may be taking on, and how does that affect the profession as a whole with salaries and things there. And so it's something to consider as well, because like you said, the more options there are, the more, I think, the more people are going to want to specialize in some of these areas, because they are incredible and they are interesting and they are challenging and exciting. And so in doing that, though, just we want to, I really think it's important to make sure that general practitioners still have, access and are still able to do some of these things, because for some of our clients, that's the only option that they're going to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Alyssa, that was sort of my second takeaway, part of what you said there, which was like, it reminded me of our mid-level practitioner conversation where, okay, if we create these specialties, are we making it affordable for the veterinarian to pursue these, or are we leading them down career paths that don't have a lot of potential, or where they're getting, that debt to income ratio is getting tricky? Those are, of course, the answers I don't have. I'm hoping that the people that make these decisions do. But I think all of those factor in. I think it's really easy to look at this and say a clear yes or no, black or white answer. But of course, it gets very nuanced when we consider these changes in veterinary medicine.
Yeah. Also, I was interested in, looking at those numbers, and we need some more recent numbers, I think, to truly draw some conclusions about whether or not the number of specialists is plateauing. But that is something that I'm definitely interested in seeing over the next decade, is has this really accelerated growth started to, slow down, and are we kind of saturating where we need to be to have specialists in the profession? But that'll be interesting to look at in the decades to come. And I kind of wonder a little bit about how things like the pandemic and telemedicine maybe have contributed to that, especially when you look at specialties that can be done remotely or through telehealth, like radiology and things like that.
Yes. I mean, so much to consider here with this topic. Like we say, we do encourage everyone to to check out. Keep up with this, see what's going to happen. Like we said, I think is up till August 12th that they are taking public commentary. So encourage people to look into that if that's something they're interested in and feel like they have educated opinions to add to the topic. And Alyssa, I think that brings us to our win of the week. So any good wins this week for you?
Yeah, I have a non-clinical win. The school year's over and kids are done with school and everything went well. And we've had tickets for a while now, but we went to see Hamilton live at the Smith Center, which is, where our off-Broadway productions are done here in Las Vegas. And it was everything that I dreamed that it would be. It was the first time I had seen Hamilton live, but I know all the music and everything, and we just had a lovely time. So that was really exciting for me.
I understand. That's fantastic. Anytime I could leave the house on a, what's the right word? Leisure basis, hobby basis. I don't know. That's it's nice when you actually schedule time to do those things and make them happen. And of course, Hamilton's fantastic. I'm trying to think of my win of the week. I was trying to think of a clinical win this week because I was in the clinic on Thursday, but it was one of those days where I just had like a bunch of sick cats with very abstract blood work and no definitive diagnoses. I had a cat behavior consult. I mean, how many times are those rewarding? So anyway, I'm going to follow suit. It's not going to be clinical. And I'm really going to follow your theme. Mine is that it is officially concert season. And speaking of fun hobbies, and I have a concert coming up. James Taylor is my first concert of the season coming up in a few weeks. Yeah. And then I was supposed to see Billy Joel at the end of the summer, but you may have heard he just canceled his tour. So
yes,
that's not
I did
a win
hear
of the
that.
week, but
we hope that he is going to be able to recover with this diagnosis. I had heard that this is something that they might be able to treat in him. So that's fantastic news.
Exactly. That can be the win part is that exactly. It's hopefully something that's manageable. So anyway, to end on that random note, Alyssa, great talking with you, and to our audience, thanks so much for listening in.
Thank you for joining us in the Veterinary Breakroom. If you enjoyed today's episode, you can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, including a video version on YouTube. While you're there, make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. You can also listen to or watch our podcast episodes on our website at cliniciansbrief.com/podcasts. Or drop us a line at podcasts@instinct.vet. Veterinary Breakroom is an Instinct Science production produced by Alexis Ussery and co-hosted by Alyssa Watson, Beth Molleson, and Katie Berlin.